Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about a subject we often overlook: a woman with no friends. At first glance, it might seem like a sad tale, but it's far more complex than that. This is a story of resilience, reflection, and the invisible threads that connect us all. We are wired for connection. From the moment we are born, our survival depends on the bonds we form. Yet, not everyone has the luxury of these connections. Some walk their path alone, not by choice, but by circumstance. But is that loneliness, or is it something more? Behind every woman who stands alone lies a story. Maybe she trusted the wrong people. Perhaps life took her down a path that others couldn't follow. Or maybe she chose solitude as a way to find her truth. Whatever the reason, her journey is unique and worth understanding. There is strength in solitude, but loneliness is different. Solitude is empowering when it's a choice that allows us to grow, think, and rediscover ourselves. But loneliness is heavy, it isolates, it silences, and it can make even the strongest among us question their worth. Yet, as a society, we often overlook the lonely. We rush through our lives preoccupied with our own worries, rarely pausing to notice the woman sitting alone at the cafe, the colleague who eats lunch at her desk, or the neighbor who hasn't had a visitor in weeks. We see them, but do we really see them? But here's the thing: a woman with no friends is not weak. She is resilient. She navigates a world that thrives on connection, finding her strength within. She is resourceful, creative, and often deeply self-aware. In her solitude, she may discover truths about herself that many of us never will. So what can we do? It begins with empathy. A smile, a kind word, a simple invitation can be transformative. We can build bridges where there are none and create spaces where everyone feels seen and valued. A woman with no friends is not a failure of her own making often. It's a reflection of a world that forgets to reach out. But we can change that. Let's commit to being the kind of people who see, who care, and who connect. Because no one should feel invisible in a world that has room for us all. Thank you. Every human being is wired for connection, a fundamental need that transcends culture, age, or circumstance. It's an essential part of who we are, deeply embedded in our biology and psychology. From the moment we are born, we depend on others for survival. A newborn's cry is not just a signal of discomfort, it's a plea for connection, for reassurance that someone is there. As we grow, this need doesn't diminish, it transforms. It evolves from physical dependence to emotional and social reliance, shaping the way we navigate the world. Yet, despite this universal truth, there are those who walk through life without the connections they need. This isn't always a matter of choice. Sometimes it's a product of circumstance, a result of past experiences, or the byproduct of living in an increasingly disconnected world. A woman with no friends is not merely a solitary figure, she is a symbol of how connection can fail to materialize. Even in a society that is more connected than ever in superficial ways. This raises profound questions about us as individuals and as a collective society. How do we treat those who exist outside the social norms we so readily embrace? What assumptions do we make about their lives, their value, or their happiness? A woman without friends challenges the narrative that relationships are inherently easy to form and maintain. Her experience forces us to confront the complexities of human connection and the obstacles that can stand in its way. Perhaps it's the fast-paced nature of modern life that's to blame. We are constantly rushing, multitasking, and striving for personal success, often at the expense of meaningful relationships. In this environment, it's easy for someone to fall through the cracks. A woman without friends might not lack the desire for connection, but could find herself in a position where opportunities to build those bonds are limited or non-existent. It could be due to past betrayals, a series of unfortunate circumstances, or a struggle to fit into social spaces that feel alien or unwelcoming. There is a stigma attached to isolation. We often equate having friends with being successful, loved, and fulfilled, while solitude is seen as a sign of failure or deficiency. This oversimplification ignores the many layers of a person's life and experiences. It also perpetuates the isolation of those who are already on the margins, making it even harder for them to reach out or be reached. Yet, the absence of connection doesn't mean the absence of worth. A woman with no friends still possesses dreams, thoughts, and a unique perspective on life. She might carry a depth of understanding and resilience born from her experiences. Her journey reminds us that connection is not something to be taken for granted. It is fragile, requiring effort and empathy from both sides. Her story also forces us to examine how we can do better, not just as individuals, but as a society. If connection is universal, then the absence of it reflects a shared responsibility. Her solitude is not hers alone. It is a challenge to all of us to create a world where connection is not just a possibility, but a certainty for everyone. Behind every person who seems disconnected lies a unique story, often unspoken and misunderstood. These stories are complex, layered with experiences that shape the way someone engages with the world or doesn't. A woman with no friends, often seen as an outlier or enigma, carries a narrative that challenges the assumptions we make about her life. Her isolation isn't a mere absence of relationships, it's a window into vulnerability, rejection, and sometimes profound strength. Human relationships are rarely straightforward. For some, the journey to build and sustain connections is fraught with obstacles. Perhaps this woman trusted deeply once, only to be met with betrayal or indifference. Trust, once shattered, is not easily rebuilt. It leaves behind scars that whisper caution at every opportunity for connection, creating a cycle where isolation feels safer than the potential pain of trying again. Other times, life circumstances pull people apart. Relocations, career changes, caregiving responsibilities, or health challenges can disrupt the social fabric of a person's life. A woman may find herself alone not because she chooses to be, but because the rhythms of her life no longer align with those around her. This isn't a reflection of her value, but rather the ebb and flow of human connections, which are often as fragile as they are powerful. Then there are those who march to the beat of their own drum, whose interests, perspectives, or ways of being don't fit neatly into societal molds. For these women, the world can feel alienating. It's not that they lack the desire for friendship, but they may struggle to find kindred spirits who truly understand and appreciate them. This misalignment can lead to feelings of being unseen or unheard, pushing them further into solitude. Yet society often judges those who stand alone. There's a tendency to view isolation as a failing either of the individual or their circumstances. We rarely stop to consider the courage it takes to navigate a world that prioritizes connection when one is without it. We overlook the resilience required to face each day in solitude, the inner strength to keep moving forward without the safety net of a supportive community. And then there's strength, sometimes the quiet, unacknowledged kind. A woman with no friends may have learned to rely on herself in ways that many of us never will. She may have cultivated self-awareness and independence, drawing from an inner reservoir of fortitude to fill the void left by the absence of close relationships. Her story, far from being a tale of weakness or inadequacy, can be one of profound self-discovery and resilience. But the unspoken stories of isolation are not just personal, they are a reflection of societal dynamics. They force us to question how we create spaces for connection and whether we truly see those on the margins. They remind us that every person carries a history, a reason for where they are, and that understanding these stories can transform how we engage with one another. In these narratives, we find not just the reasons for isolation, but the potential for compassion, empathy, and change. There's a profound difference between choosing solitude and living in loneliness. Solitude can be empowering, a conscious decision to carve out space for oneself, to grow, reflect, and recharge. It's a retreat into one's own company, often leading to clarity and self-discovery. On the other hand, loneliness is a heavy, unwelcome companion. It seeps into the soul, casting a shadow over even the brightest moments. It isn't chosen but endured, and its weight can be unbearable. For a woman without friends, this distinction is critical. Solitude might be a sanctuary, a place where she learns to listen to her own thoughts, free from the noise and expectations of the world. In solitude, she might find creativity flourishing as many artists and thinkers have throughout history. It's in these quiet moments that new ideas are born, that strength is built, and that the complexities of life are given space to be understood. But loneliness is different. It's not a state of being alone, but a state of feeling disconnected, even in a crowd. It's the absence of meaningful bonds and the pervasive sense that one is unseen, unheard, or unloved. Loneliness gnaws at the edges of self-worth, whispering doubts and insecurities. A woman living with loneliness might go about her day appearing fine on the surface, but inside she could be carrying an ache that no one sees. The transition from solitude to loneliness can be subtle. What starts as a period of self-reflection can, over time, shift into isolation if there's no outlet for connection. It's not uncommon for a woman who initially embraces her independence to realize after months or years that something vital is missing. The absence of companionship, of shared laughter and understanding becomes more pronounced. The silence that once felt peaceful starts to echo. This duality strength in solitude versus the weight of loneliness reveals a truth about the human experience. We are social creatures. Even the most independent among us need moments of connection, of being part of something larger than ourselves. For a woman without friends, this truth can be both liberating and painful. On one hand, it validates her desire for companionship as natural and necessary. On the other, it underscores the absence she feels. Yet, this duality also highlights the resilience inherent in such a journey. To navigate the world without the safety net of close friendships requires courage. It requires learning to self-soothe, to find joy in small moments, and to build a life that sustains itself. It's not easy, and it's not always fulfilling, but it's a testament to the strength that lies within. This complexity of solitude is a choice, and loneliness as a burden makes her story all the more compelling. It reminds us of the importance of balance, of reaching out, and of recognizing that even the strongest individuals benefit from the warmth of connection. Her journey is not one of weakness, but of navigating two opposing forces with grace, often finding strength where others might falter. The role of society in fostering isolation is often overlooked, but deeply significant. While we celebrate connection as a fundamental human need, the structures and norms within our communities can unintentionally exclude, isolate, or alienate those who don't fit neatly into the prevailing social framework. A woman without friends is not simply an individual disconnected from others. She is a reflection of the environments and systems that fail to embrace her. Modern life, despite its interconnectedness through technology, often amplifies disconnection. Social media, for instance, creates the illusion of closeness while fostering superficial relationships. A woman might scroll through endless feeds, seeing curated glimpses of others' lives, but this interaction lacks depth. Instead of feeling included, she may feel more isolated, comparing her reality to the seemingly perfect lives of others. This societal shift toward virtual relationships often prioritizes quantity over quality, leaving little room for genuine, meaningful bonds. Cultural norms and expectations also play a significant role. In many societies, women are often expected to fulfill certain roles, whether as caregivers, professionals, or social facilitators. These roles come with inherent pressures and can lead to burnout, leaving little time or energy for nurturing friendships. Moreover, women who don't conform to these expectations may find themselves excluded or judged, further isolating them from their communities. The social environments we create can also be inherently exclusive. Consider the cliques that form in schools, workplaces, or neighborhoods. They often operate on unspoken rules of inclusion, favoring those who share common interests, backgrounds, or values. A woman who doesn't fit these molds, perhaps due to her personality, life circumstances, or past experiences, can quickly find herself on the outside looking in. This exclusion may not be deliberate, but its impact is profound, reinforcing feelings of invisibility and unworthiness. Economic and structural barriers further exacerbate isolation. A woman struggling financially, for example, might lack the resources to participate in social activities, from dining out with friends to joining clubs or fitness classes. These barriers create a divide where social opportunities become privileges rather than accessible spaces for connection. Similarly, geographical factors, such as living in remote areas or neighborhoods lacking community centers, can limit opportunities for interaction.